we're in Glasgow. I'm here with us there's five of us, four other senators. I'll introduce each one of those. Sitting next to me is Senator Gonzalez from Long Beach, Senator Becker from the Bay Area, former Natural Resources Secretary, and Senator Laird, and Senator Wyckowski. I will frame out briefly the big picture and then turn it over to each one to talk about different areas of public policy that we've been engaged with and learning and the homework that we're doing here. I just wanted to share the big picture in the sense that California, as you work around the globe and you know all the various countries that are here, has just an extraordinary brand. There's a real interest in our efforts. And as we re-engage, Senator Wyckowski and I were in Poland a couple of years ago, and there were no Americans there. And there's a real interest in leadership from the United States. But that leadership extends beyond just the national government, the president and the cabinet secretaries. The other night, we met a number of United States senators, a number of Congress members who came over with the delegation with Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi. But there's a real interest in the cities and state governments. We were just with a number of governors from the state of Washington, from the state of Illinois, from the state of Hawaii, all of whom are engaged in interesting activities. And so as we face this climate change and we see the reports that are coming out in terms of the extreme weather and the impacts, the urgency is greater than ever. And that what we see here is there is an unbelievable desire to learn, and we have learned, as you will see from some of the discussions you have before us. So California is quite the leader in terms of the brand and the interest of others, what we've been able to do, and that it's really a two-way street of both us learning on the one hand, of coming up with new ideas and meeting with folks in the private sector and public sector, which is quite important, but also sending a global message that California is part of the larger architecture of the United States of America. The second highest emitter is in all the way committed to work hard. And with that, I want to turn the discussion over to Senator Lina Gonzalez from Long Beach.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for being with us. We are streaming live from Glasgow. Really glad to be here, of course, as the senator that represents Long Beach, the Port of Long Beach in Southeast Los Angeles. One of the largest ports in our state and nation, but also one of the most directly impacted communities for environmental justice in the Southeast region. So I'm here on behalf of my constituents and of all of California to really be able to represent us in that regard. So I think what we've done here, and certainly who I've connected with, is ensuring we're figuring out the port congestion issue, not just on the supply chain logistics and the economics of how we can recover from this crisis, but also on the emissions reductions that we need to be reducing, yesterday. But also on the transportation side, as chair of transportation, looking at opportunities where the globe has really made some really strong commitments to alternative fuels, whether that be in hydrogen fuel cell, zero emission for short haul and long haul, which we know is our strongest emitters in the transportation sector. And really, again, generally working with our partners to be able to get those two issues combated on behalf of the Senate delegation. But I'm really glad to be here, and I look forward to continuing our work the next 2 days. I'm going to send it over to my colleague from Silicon Valley, Senator Becker.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, here with you all. As Senator Hertzberg said, I think California's main role is to, first of all, show that it can be done and how it can be done, and be a source of technology, inspiration for the rest of the world, developing the technologies that the rest of the world will need. And then second, we're here to both learn from other states and other countries what they're doing that maybe we can bring back to California. So California has, since 2000, we've reduced our emissions more than 20% per capita. At the same time, we've grown our economy by 60%. So again, that is a great example for the rest of the world. At the same time, we're learning about new technologies, as Senator Gonzalez mentioned, for example, hydrogen, what other countries are doing, as Senator Laird will talk about with offshore wind, which can be a tremendous resource for California, and extremely and perfectly actually complementary to our solar and our onshore wind. So we're learning about these new technologies so we can take it back, so we can accelerate faster. Again, California has led the country, we've led the world in many ways, but we know, all of us here together, the reason we're here is we know we have to move faster. even faster. And so that's why we're here. And I think we've had great meetings on both those fronts. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Senator Laird.
Thank you, Senator Becker, and to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I participated in the Governor's Climate Conference when I was Secretary of Resources in 2018 and spoke at the United Nations Oceans Conference in New York in 2017. And there seems to be a greater sense of urgency here, that the world is hot and getting hotter, and that the time is short for taking strong action. And the great thing about this is not just that we've talking about to others about the steps that California has taken. We are learning from others and trying to bring back the lessons to California. We met earlier today for a briefing on wetlands and oceans with Pew, and really California has taken great steps in wetlands restoration to deal with some of the sea level rise and other mitigations that we will have, but we need to take much more and we need to quantify it. And as Senator Becker said, I will be traveling to see Scotland's offshore wind on Wednesday. One of the two places in California that it is prioritized is in off of my district, off of Morro Bay, and in Humboldt County. And the Central Coast is a model for transition, because the two fossil fuel plants in Moss Landing and Morro Bay will be turned to the largest battery storage that exists in California. And we have a chance at Diablo Canyon to use the transmission for the offshore wind coming in. So we are in transition in a good way, providing jobs and taking care of it. And we're learning about that from other people here, as well as talking about the California lesson. And it's my pleasure to turn it over to Senator Bob Wyckowski of Fremont.
You know, these conferences are so important for subnationals to get together face to face and talk about issues in real time. You
Someone
know,
needs to unmute someone.
okay, somebody will get it. We know that the new calculations that come out, we've got this idea that maybe the pledges that the national governments have made are between 1.8% and 2.7. Well, that's a big flex, but California now can look at how our programs, investments we made in the last budget, and what we're going to do in the next decade. The news about methane, we've got, you know, SB 1383, we put 200 million or $195 million into the budget. Is that going to be enough? Is we got to make those hard calculations on how we move incrementally each year in the next decade. And we get to talk to our colleagues from the state of Washington. We had a meeting at the U.S. consulate about their cap and invest program and how is that going to harmonize with the California cap and trade. They want to join our trading groups, but you know they've improved on their products. So all those discussions that you have, I'm going to be participating in discussion in Edinburgh on drought and flood. You know, California more or less wins the casino climate competition when it comes to flooding and sea level rise and wildfires and drought. We got it all. So we can just talk with other folks, as my colleagues have said, on how they're achieving it. We're still leading. We're still in the game. It's really important morally for people to know that we have so many folks on the ground that are saying, oh no, we're doubling down on the climate work we've done. And with that, let's open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you everyone for providing those updates. I'm going to sort of just facilitate the Q&A here. And as Senator Wyckowski mentioned, we are ready to open up the Q&A. I do see already a couple of raised hands. Please again, use the raise hand function to ask a question. And we're going to go first, I think, to Hannah Wiley with the Sacramento Bee. Please unmute your mic and video if you wish.
Okay, thanks all. I appreciate you taking the time to update us on what you're learning. Several of you mentioned that you've learned a lot from other countries and states, but can you get a lot more specific? And who are you learning from? What states, what countries, what new legislation might we expect in 2022 that the conference inspired as well?
Okay, I'll go back to Washington with their cap and invest. They've tied their allowances to actual reductions. it's not cap and trade. They're not trading out pollution. They're saying everybody has to make actual reductions, which is an improvement on the program. They now want to join us. Why would we continue with allowing people to continue to pollute and just buy the credits? It's a better program because we want to get to 1.5 degrees centigrade. We don't get there unless everybody joins in. So that's a specific ask that they have for us.
Okay,
Now
with
it's
you, Selena.
Alina.
Hold on.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks so much for the question. For me specifically, I met today with the International Maritime Organization, as mentioned, because of the issue of port congestion. We know right now there's a 40% increase in emissions since the supply chain crisis. And so although the Port of Long Beach and LA is not part of the IMO, we are learning from them. They actually have $5 billion that will be earmarked for research and development for digitization, for data sharing amongst the many countries that their member organization is a part of. And so obviously Long Beach and LA is looking at that, but that in itself, we hope to learn from them, even being the 5th largest economy, to be able to reduce emissions for more efficiency in our supply chain during this crisis.
We're going to go to Senator Laird, and I got one more question to answer that.
Thank you, Hannah, for the question. And let me go a little deeper on a subject that I brought up during the opening comments. And that is when we met with the Pew Foundation, they talked about wetlands restoration as a mitigation along the coast and in the bay to rising seas and climate change. And we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on wetlands restoration, and a lot of it is in Southern California. And we did it for the general environmental purpose reasons. Now they are really suggesting, and it's something we're going to have to come back to Sacramento and consider, is whether or not we want to look at it through a climate lens and quantify it in terms of what it means in terms of reduced emissions and mitigation against the changing climate. And so while California has been a leader on wetlands restoration, we haven't looked at it totally over the last decades through the lens of climate. And I think that's what we're going to bring back specifically. And we're going to look in conjunction with the scoping plan and other activities, whether we need to do something legislatively or budgetarily to make that happen.
Can I just add a couple more things? I think it is important to get into the details. And I'll mention 3 more to add to what my colleague said. 1, offshore wind. Senator Laird is going to go visit offshore wind. We have a shelf that drops dramatically quickly, and he's going to be going up. And I went some weeks ago in terms of what's happening in Portugal, what's happening here in Scotland, where you literally have these huge floating platforms that have 18 megawatts on a wind turbine. Normal turbines are 2 to 3. Huge in terms of the impact there, and really figuring how that works in countries that have made it work. Second, we met with some folks on methane. It's a whole issue about how you can feed animals differently, because the nature of this methane is so much worse than some of the other carbon. Lastly, Prince Charles and others in terms of the UK, when we met with the UK government, have a whole philanthropic effort afoot in terms of innovation and the private sector working with folks, even at a much greater level than what we had in California, looking at the economic impacts and actual energy payback times, which are pretty significant. We have other examples, but I think we wanted to share a substantive approach to you here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now we'll go to Deborah with Politico, and really quick for the members in Scotland, we'll try and keep maybe 1 or 2 folks to answer, because I know we still have a lot of questions ahead of us. So now Deborah from Politico, if you can ask your question.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for having this. Sorry, I know this isn't the topic you're hoping to talk about, but I just have to ask about the governor's absence, because it's now kind of overshadowing the actual conference, especially because he hasn't been seen or heard from since he canceled, and he hasn't said what events he'll be participating in virtually. So do you know why he canceled? What's been the effect for you of him not being there? Has he been missed? Have people been asking about it? And do you know when or what events he will be participating in virtually? Thank you.
Well, I think this story is a little overblown, because we are coming to this from meeting with and spending time with officials from the Natural Resources Agency and Environmental Protection Agency. And California is in evidence here. The Air Board chair is participating tomorrow and the rest of the week The Energy Commission chair has been here. There's been an amazing presence by the administration. And of course, the lieutenant governor represented the governor. So I think California has been flying the flag quite admirably and significantly for most parts of the administration that are related to climate.
If there's not anyone else in Scotland who wants to answer that question, then we can go to KRCR News, I think out of Reading.
Yes, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
So yeah, just a couple quick questions, if that's okay.
Morning.
So, kind of on the Northern California element here, we just came out of a really bad fire season, right? And even though we're getting back into kind of a more wet pattern, was the topic of wildfires and what to do about it discussed? Do you guys like connect with other areas such as Australia that are also experiencing these kind of rapidly worsening fire seasons? And how did that topic come up?
I haven't had any discussions with anybody on the fires. I mean, we acknowledge that we've had historic levels. It's part of the equation. We're still here for 3 more days that we're talking, but I think, you know, the message that we like to relay is we did a historical investment on wildfire prevention of $1.5 billion, and that money, as we just talked with Wade Crowfoot at the Resources Agency, that money has gone out the door. It's actually in the hands of the contractors that are going to start doing the mitigation work that's there. So it's a success story, and we're going to get feedback from them. I guarantee you, I'm going to ask them for the feedback on how they spend the money and how conservancies spend the money so that we can tackle this over a 5-year period. We have to grow the attention that we have and not one and done. But it hasn't happened yet.
And also this year, the governor signed a bill because until this year, what Senator Wyckowski just said was our ethic. Whatever you put in the budget during the year was what we did on fire prevention. And this year, we enacted legislation that says we will have goals for 5 years. It will be a plan that we can set goals and measure, and we will actually have transparency. It won't be you on this call that'll have to figure out what's been done in a year. It will actually be transparent against the goals and reported by the administration what we've done. And then against the major investment that Senator Wyckowski described and what we're planning over 5 years, we can see if we're meeting the need. If the goals are too low, if we have to go higher with regard to fuels management, forest practices, prescribed fire, and all the things that are part of the really emerging strong fire policy in the state.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And just one quick question, if that's okay, I'll let you guys get on to the next media outlets. So what is the timeline on this report? Do you kind of take what you've learned from other countries and or states, and you come back and like present what are the best options to do moving forward? Like, what does that look like once you get back to California?
We are, thank you so much. You know, this is the homework club. We are taking notes and working our hearts out. You know, it's critically important in my judgment in terms of the next steps that we engage. So the pro tem and the Senate has designated a group, most of which are part of this, to really sit down the social justice and issues that we care about and figure we're going to be working together in a caucus. So bringing these information, these ideas, a series of other follow-up meetings are going to occur as a result of this, both through online and in foreign countries and also some in the States, to really help do the homework and put this together to be as impactful as we can and to impact and have a sense of urgency, both in terms of the environment and long-term, and most importantly, the short-term impacts of extreme heat and things that are affecting folks now, whether it's the fires, whether it's extreme heat in the communities that I represent in Los Angeles, and create policies that have both adaptation and mitigation of the fancy words we politicians use, but that's the point.
Okay, now we'll go to, I believe, Kevin Stark with KQED and NPR.
Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate you all doing this. I have a question about cap and trade. I'm wondering if you're still promoting this program to other countries. The California Air Resources Board obviously is reevaluating the program. It's received some criticism for its impact to communities that live around pollution sources and also for its ability to just reduce emissions. So a question about that. And then just a follow up to Deborah's question. Do you know if and when Governor Newsom will be participating in this conference virtually?
Senator Becker, I know he has a number of events and we're well represented with the Lieutenant Governor, with the Natural Resources Chair, the EPA Chair, the Chair of the California Energy Commission, the Air Resources Board. And so California is very well represented here.
But we don't.
On cap and trade, I'll turn over to Senator Wyckowski, who's really been the expert on this in the state Senate. But we've had wonderful conversations, and to pick up on the thread with Washington State, again, they were inspired by our model. They've done some things to extend what we've done, and now by linking together, we've begun to have some really robust conversations with them about taking this to the next level, because cap and should be a vehicle for significant emissions reductions. Historically in California, our emissions reductions have really more come from the renewable portfolio standard and not from cap and trade. So I think we're a strong interest here in how we can strengthen cap and trade. I'll turn it over to Senator Wyckowski.
Well, Kevin, we all know that in 10 days, they're going to have another auction in November, and the hedge fund participation in the last auction raised the price to $7. The rumor, as you must know, is the same thing, that the price is going to go over $30. So even in Bob Wyckowski world, when I wanted a different cap and trade, $30, $31 would be a good price. So the market, the international market, is discussing the actual cost of emissions, and it's starting to have its impact on our program. Do we need to harmonize with the Washington program? Do we need to watch our friends in Europe, and they're at $60 a metric ton? Sure, but we're improving that because we don't want to shock the system. We don't want the price to be so high that our industries don't recover from the pandemic. So I mean, I'm still a critic. I openly will say I'm a critic, but we're watching the November auctions to see how that goes. I had a conversation with Mary. She's in town and saying, now that you're out and you're looking at it from a different angle, what do you think we can have for improvements? How can the legislature work with?
It does look like the connection has cut out there for a second. Can you just repeat that last 20 seconds or so?
That's what the ambition that you get, the energy that you get at a COP, that you say, we have to improve our programs. We've got to go back and do our homework and say, how can we make cap and trade deliver the amount of reductions and incentivize behavior changes that we want in the industry? And that's it. Next question.
Okay, now it looks like we're going to iHeartMedia, KFBK, NBC Radio. You have your question?
Hi, guys. John Lobertini here. Two questions. One, circling back with the governor, he canceled his appearance on this trip very abruptly, and there hasn't been a lot of conversation about, is there anything wrong? How's he doing? There have been some rumblings that there may be some problems out there. Can any of you update us on how things are going with him? It was an abrupt cancellation.
Well, they gave us a heads up on it. Look, everything they said to us is that it was a family issue. I was talking to some of his administration people, and I've told some of the outlets, there is nobody in California who wanted to be at this conference more than Gavin Newsom. I don't remember how many meetings I've had with him, but almost every single meeting he talks about climate change. He cares deeply about this issue, and this is a big deal, and this is a world stage. It's important. But we're all human beings, man. We're all human beings. Something clearly is with his family. I don't think it's appropriate to further dig into it. I take him at face value, whatever it is. And sometimes you need to stay home. We don't know exactly what his schedule is at this point in terms of what his Zoom video stuff is going to be. We don't know the answer to that question, but But clearly, he's made the statement with his administration, with everybody, as Senator Laird said, was here. There's 5 senators, you got 10 assembly members, Senator Wyckowski's been to 5 of these. I've been to a number of them. This is the biggest presence I've ever seen in California and the most well regarded reception we've ever received that I've experienced.
Next question.
Okay, now it looks like we're gonna go to Rachel Becker with Cal Matters. Rachel, do you have your question?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I was hoping to talk a little more about what Senator Wyckowski mentioned about cap and trade and conversations with the Washington State delegation about their cap and invest program. I was wondering what would that require changing in California's cap and trade program, and what do you plan on doing to address that when you get back?
Well, so they passed their program. Oregon didn't pass the program. They got it through one house. So the question is how do we harmonize? Because they made some improvements. I'll go to the offsets. They allow 3% offsets, but you have to have actual reduction in your emissions. You can't just trade out your pollution and pay a fee to do it. You actually have to change your cement operations, your refining operations, whatever your covered entity is going to be, you actually have to do that. In my mind, that's a good improvement. That's a good improvement because they give them 12 years. So they give them some time, but as they're watching the price of the auctions go up, it's better to go make the changes before it gets too high when it's going to cost you some more money. That's a business decision. The business community has always said, give us a timeline and let us know where the horizon is, and we'll make the adjustment. When it's time for us to change, we'll do it. So that's one of those bits. It's probably won't be able to be done. Have to sit back and hopefully we get some that we want the cap and trade program to succeed if we're going to be a regional and have regional climate consortium, and we got to have more people participate. I'd love to get to the place, and I haven't had the discussion with the Oregonians, what they need to feel like the West Coast is going to come together and act as a unit. So that's just one example. We have our homework, as Senator Hertzberg said, to do. We got more assigned.
Just to
Next question.
follow up, what needs to happen to get Washington to join California's program? And then also, why did it take the COP to start having these discussions with such a nearby neighbor?
Well, yes, you finish the session, you're exhausted, you go home, you go to your district, there's no opportunity to go up to Olympia and talk. We're having the conversations now.
Yeah, Reuben Carlisle, who spent most of the day with us the other day, author of this measure, and we met with the governor of the state yesterday, but he's come, Senator Allen's been with him, he's been in my office. We've had these conversations for a period of time. And I've been working with him very, very, very closely. He's been the lead. And again, we spent the whole day with him the other day. So we just learned more in terms of working together and spending that much time together.
He's coming to Sacramento. We're gonna meet.
Well, he's coming back to Sacramento. He was there. He told me he was there 2 weeks ago or something. So, okay. Next question.
Yeah, it looks like, do we have any other questions from reporters? Please raise your hand if you have any questions. I'll just leave it there for a second, give anybody time. Okay, it looks like we have another question from KRCR. Can I ask your question?
Yeah, just really quick. So just kind of like, I guess, looking into their side here, just to balance out my question. So a lot of people will say, you see all these big jets flying to this climate conference, and that's kind of producing, a lot of pollution as is. What is the importance still, though, of, can you explain the importance of having all these world leaders, signatories coming together, and kind of like why that's justified, just for people who are skeptical?
Any thoughts?
Well, if I can just
Yeah,
add
go ahead,
really
please.
quick, I think for someone, again, I want to kind of touch on the point that someone that represents environmental justice communities. I mean, we certainly didn't come here on a private jet or anything, but I think what we're trying to do right now is really ensure that California is at the forefront, especially for these communities that have long had exacerbating and compounding issues. whether it's soil, water contamination, again, congestion at our ports that are emitting emissions 40% higher than normal operations. I mean, each of us has a role to play here, and we need to take homework back, and we want to build a strong climate agenda in 2022. And so that is really important, but
let's go to
also
you.
having these equity concerns at the forefront.
And then one other thing I would suggest at the very human level is for all of us, whether it's in your news business, or us in the public policy business, this pandemic has impacted us all. There's been a real interest in getting together again. Last year was tough. The issue with respect to the United States position in the previous federal administration caused some challenges when Senator Wyckowski and I were in Poland together. We were the only Americans, certainly the only Californians there. And so that's part of the human condition. You marry that with the recent reports about the numbers. You see the fires and all the extreme weather and all just that are part of climate change. Yes, there's an impact, but I would suggest that this most important. United States coming in with money for the underserved nations, a lot of interest in energy. And with that, I know Senator Becker wanted to make some closing remarks.
Well, I'd say just that being here, the interaction you have just on the train the first day, met a woman from Scotland who's involving with green hydrogen that they're making with their wind farms that some of us will be visiting. Then someone from Brazil who's working on low carbon fuels met on the bus on the way to the COP. And then folks from Nigeria who have interesting perspective and how we can help the developing world. And then other states, there's a National Council on Environmental Legislature. So meeting people from other states face to face that maybe we've talked on the phone with. So there's just been a lot, I think, that we've all gained from being here in person.
Thank you.
And now I think we're going back to KPK, I think John Lobertini.
Can we make this the last question?
Two
Or any more?
more.
Two more?
We have one more, so maybe we
Okay,
could do
go
this
ahead.
one and then the next one.
There was some discussion at the beginning of this about
We're
Sorry,
losing
cut
you.
out.
hang on. Sorry about that.
Good now, good now.
There at the beginning of this, there was some discussion about the ports of LA and Long Beach. Have any of you gleaned anything from all of these meetings that will help maybe immediately with what's going on there? Obviously, there are lots of moving parts. Have you picked up anything that you can bring back and help to facilitate, move this along a little bit more quickly than is currently happening?
Yeah, I think just hearing from the global community representing the Port of Long Beach right now, the global community, even our smaller ports of entry around the country or around the globe, are starting to look at things like I mentioned, digitization. They're taking a really strong approach, $5 billion, which for us might be a drop in the bucket, but for them is a significant investment in ensuring that there's more efficiency so that we can have reduced emissions at our ports. $17 billion is what the Build Back Better plan pledges at the federal level. And so California stands to receive tons of those dollars for that very concern, digitization, so we can share data, we can become more efficient, we can have, not 70 ships idling, but also, less, of course, obviously less than that, but also ensuring that we have more shore power electrical opportunities and for ships to plug in. So we've got a lot of work to do in that sense, but we want to learn from our global partners as to how best to invest. California doesn't always have all the answers, but we certainly are doing good work in that space.
One more.
And it looks like the reporter had their hand up is no longer looking to ask that question. So I think with that, we can wrap it. I don't know if anyone on your end has any closing comments, but.
I just had one last thought representing much of Silicon Valley, that climate change is the greatest challenge of our time, but it's also the greatest economic opportunity of our time. And I think we're all very conscious of that. Our largest export as a state last quarter was electric vehicles. So again, as part of being here, we see the ability to, again, both talk about what California is doing, to both learn, but to, again, make sure that California companies, that we're saying the right policy to bring down the cost of all these solutions. And then Thank you.
Everybody. Anything else?
Okay, I think that
Thank you.
wraps up.
Thank you all.
Thank you so very much. We keep working. Keep you up to speed. Appreciate it much. Thank you, everyone.